There are a number of different settings on shapes that allow us to alter the way in which they are drawn. Probably the most basic of these is the fill setting, which determines how the shape is filled in, basically what color it is filled in with. So on the path that we made previously, you saw that by default the SVG path is filled in with black and the regular path isn't filled in at all. It's just an outline. We can alter this by setting the fill value. Now it turns out that fill has a type called paint. So there's a package called paint, and paint has a few types that are subtypes of it. The simplest one of which is color. There is also a linear gradient and a radial gradient. Okay, so these are the subtypes of paint that we can use to set the fill, and we can demonstrate the use of these simply by coming down here. Well, we'll start off with our SVG path. SVG.fill equals, I don't want it to be black, I want it to be some other color. Turns out, we should pull up the API, because there are a lot of different colors that are defined inside of here. So the color object has Alice Blue, Antique White, Aqua, Aquamarine, Azure, and many others. Okay, so you can see this is a fairly long list, and you can pick whatever you want. How about we go with tomato for our SVG path. And you'll see that now it is not drawn in the previous black color. It has what they consider to be the color of a tomato. These other types, linear gradient and radial gradient, allow you to have kind of colors that it's a paint that adjusts from one color to another. And once again, we can look in the API and we can see that the linear gradient, there are two ways that we can make this, one of which takes a start x, and in some ways they both take a start x and y, an end x and y. So these are locations. A proportional, which tells you whether or not the values that are in these things called stops are ranging from 0 to 1, or whether they're kind of in pixel coordinates. And a cycle method. And the cycle method has a no cycle, a reflect, and a repeat inside of it. And then you get to specify these things called stops. So a stop has a color, or has an offset for how far it is kind of from the beginning, and a color. And as I said, when these things are proportional, this value should be between 0 and 1. So using this, let's go ahead and let's make a linear gradient in our code. So we'll specify start x, start y, index, end y, the proportional, the cycle, and then we'll probably use the varargs approach to stops. And in fact, in order to do that, well, yeah. So we're going to need the cycle method. We're also going to need the stop type to define some of these things. Path dot fill equals linear gradient. Oh boy, where should we put this? How about an x of 50 and a y of, I don't know, about 250? I think that point is actually inside the shape. An endpoint, I'm going to go pretty close to the far top right corner. So then our x is going to be 550 and our y can be 50. The next argument to this was proportional, and we are going to set that to be true. So true. That way I can specify all my stops using fractional values. And then we have the cycle method. I actually want to use reflect for this. And then we have our stops. So the first one is going to be at 0. I want the color to be black. Okay. I'm only going to put 3 colors in here. I'll have it go from black and then very quickly 0.1 color dot red, and then have a slow fade from red to green. How about we go blue? Because that won't, oh no, green will work. And lastly, at 1.0, I'm going to put in a white. I'm not using any of their fancy colors there. Let's see if I got all of that right. Looks like it compiles. The proportional, perhaps I wanted my proportional to be set to false. Indeed I did. When it's true, it uses pixel level coordinates, and when it's false, there we go. So we have the black color over here that then quickly changes to a red, and then the red slowly to a green, and then the green quickly changes to a white. And because I set this to reflect, then we go back through the green. And if I were to shorten these things up, in fact, it might be interesting to move the X in a bit here. So move this X in to 250 and move this X in to 450, and you'll see a lot more of the reflection on either side. So the gradient goes from the center of that black to the center of that white there, and then it's reflected out on this edge as the red goes out towards the green, and then the green goes out towards over there. So that's a linear gradient. We'll come back and look at the other type of paint and another one of the fill settings as well.